Welcome to our Democracy is Us community gathering. It is Monday, August the 25th. We have a special presenter tonight, Matt Polsky, and he will introduce himself in a little more detail in a moment. But he and I worked together in his PhD program this summer. I mentored him in the program, and I'm very honored that he's presenting what he did in the program over three sessions. The first one was 2 weeks ago, and then we have this one. They have one more session in 2 weeks. And for those of you new to Democracy is Us, I'm Peggy O'Neill. I am the initial founder, but there was a wonderful group of people that came together as we started this organization in almost 2 years ago. And our purpose, our main purpose, is an educational training, experiential learning, transformational, even personal growth transformational program to help us be citizens of democracy, to help us be people who live democracy as a way of life, who really want to look at ourselves in a way that we respect the understanding that we're part of the culture that has what's going on happening in the culture. So we're not separate from what's going on, but we actually are somehow participating even in the areas that we don't like. I hope that may not make any sense. What I mean is that it's like maybe a big pool of water in the United States, and you put a green drop and a purple drop and an orange drop. It all mixes together to create the flavor of the water in the glass. The same in our country and our culture. We're all participating in some way that's together creating the mix that's occurring in this country. So we do some direct civics education, but as well as the transformational work. Who do I need to be? How do I need to be to have the country that I want? And what do I want? We're focusing a lot on what do I want this country to be. So tonight, again, we're excited that Matt's presenting. It's a little different than what Democracy is Us normally does, because we do always do experiential learning where we're learning about ourselves, more about ourselves. Now, it's not to say you won't learn about yourself tonight. It's just done in a different format, more of a teaching format than we normally do. So we invite you to come back to our other programs that will start up again mid-September. And to begin, we'll do a quick go around so everybody is in the space. You don't have to speak up if you don't want to, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself just very simply, name and where you live. Like I would say, I'm Peggy O'Neill. I'm in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So, and I'll just go ahead and call it out, and you can just say pass if you don't want to say anything. But Carter, I'm going to call it out so we keep this going.
Hi, I'm Carter Hillier. I'm in coastal Mississippi by the Gulf of Mexico.
Thank you. Thank you. Sharon
Hurston. I'm in western, rural, beautiful New Jersey, not very far from Matt.
Oh, great. All right. Thank you, Sharon. Michelle.
Michelle Russo, New York City.
Thank you. Debbie. And you're on mute, Debbie. All right, I'll come back to you, Debbie. Joe.
Joe, you're
on mute too, Joe.
Joe Castagliola from the Jersey Shore.
Thank you. Lucy.
Lucy Lewan in Healdsburg, California.
Thank you. Julia.
Good evening. I'm Julia Sampson. I'm in North Fayetteville, Northwest Arkansas.
Thank you. And Debbie.
I'm Debbie Burke. I'm in Northwest New Jersey.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. And I will now turn this over to Matt.
Okay. First slide, please. So this is a course that I, as Peggy mentioned, it's a course I took with her over the summer. Independent study, which kind of means we made it up ourselves, got approval. I'll be getting credit for it. And we decided to give my results in 3 parts. So today is the middle part. Quick review of 2 weeks ago. The first part, we talked about polarization. I think I gave a definition no one liked, but think of it as intense, much more than healthy disagreement within the country, and even at the personal level, a loathing even. It affects our ability to, fix our problems as a country, as a society, but it also affects our personal relationships, our friends, and even our families. So we also talked about levels of democracy, from the lowest, which I don't know, you might think of as perhaps, well, these are good things, but just so insufficient and minimal voting, a lot of complaining, but then gradually moving up Ornstein's ladder, more substantive participatory forms of democracy, where people are much more involved in their country and trying to solve its problems, to the highest levels, at least according to Ornstein, where they're actually people are actually running the government, and you could argue whether that's really the top or not. But the point is that I think some of the people I quoted and myself we're aiming at the higher levels because we feel that's really what's necessary. Although obviously, when you aim for a more a deep level of democracy, you're asking people to really, really step up. Some might say that's not possible, but we could try. We could talk about it, and we can try. I mentioned a few things briefly. I'll do more of in this one. I mentioned that there's a number of bridge building organizations in the country that try to bring people together. They aim at civility, the red people, the blue people. I guess that's a strange expression. The liberals and the conservatives, the Democrats and the Republicans, although that's also not necessarily 100% accurate. And they seem to have some success in achieving civility. Now, civility is not the highest thing on the ladder. It's probably halfway there. I think we have to aim higher, and there are some different initiatives besides bridge building that aim to actually bring people together in smallish groups to actually tackle a very tough problem that doesn't seem resolvable in any other way. And I'll mention that. I'll talk a little bit more about that today. Throw out some opinions that I think this bridge building area has potential. I'm not making any claims that all by itself it's going to solve our problems of democracy. I think other things that some of you know about and are probably working on are also necessary and need to be successful. But I think this could be a nice new thing that we weren't counting on that could really do a lot and help bring back the real sense of democracy. I had some recommendations, nothing fancy. I'll do better today. I think I said the first time, we really need more facilitators, both officially and unofficially. Okay, so let's actually start. So this one I titled, "What Would Jefferson Have Said?" Part of what we need to restore democracy. And you'll see why I focus on Jefferson in this case. That is a picture of Jefferson's living room. No, I'm wrong. His dining room. I was there over the summer. I took the tour of Monticello. They were having a special theme, frenemies. I'll be talking about that soon. That discussed his early intense friendship with John Adams. He lost it. They were at odds for many years, and then towards the end of their lives, they came back. And so this was put on by the Thomas Jefferson Foundation. And the hidden theme, not so hidden theme, is that if they could come together after years of loathing each other, maybe we can as a country. So this was the picture of the dining room. And if you look very, very carefully, you might see my left elbow on the right, proving I was there. But this is where Jefferson brought his dinner guests, who he didn't always agree with. And so they would discuss things over wine and dinner. There is a video there. Could you switch to that one? Working on that. Yeah. All right. We just had the review. I'm going to go through some of the work of those bridge building organizations, some of their ideas. We're going to see that there's a big emphasis on conversation, and there's the basics that are really no-brainers, but then they take it much, much deeper that I think you'll find very, very interesting. And they even get into some things that you might not totally agree with, that really, again, with the theme, they really challenge us in having conversations. I'll talk about the Monticello Frenemies tour and a dinner we had afterwards where we got to practice conversation. And we've worked in some discussions this time that we didn't have last time because we didn't really get to enough of it last time. They don't talk about those deliberative democracy initiatives, the ones that actually bring people together to solve a problem. More on conversations, another discussion if there's time. And then I want to try something a little bit different. There's some different ways to look at this entire problem that again ask more of us. They ask us to look at this whole problem very, very differently and approach it in some unusual manners. And I'm not totally comfortable with all the material in there. I'm hoping some of you who are will help me out a little bit. But I think there is some potential there. You'll see when we get to it, you'll see what I'm talking about. And some better recommendations this time, and hopefully we'll have more of a discussion. Next slide. Okay, Braver Angels. I'm just going to talk a little bit about that, but there is a video there that I want to show you. So they have I believe they've been doing some very good work, and the academics have been paying some attention to them and starting to analyze what they're doing well and where there is some room for improvements. And quite a few people have gone through their program in the years they've been around. Some of the fundamentals, they emphasize relationships. And they believe relationships can undermine stereotypes. They see stereotypes as a major, major problem. Although as part of their program, they admit that we all have some, and they try to surface them before they try to overcome them. And as an example of the high bar that I think they're shooting for, again, in terms of conversation, a goal of the process would be to be able to explain the other side's point in such a way that they would agree, you've caught it. And that's not easy to do. Some of the things that you might find a little controversial, this is actually a course I took with them myself, Depolarizing Within. The aim is to change your inner polarizer. It's not easy to admit or see sometimes the inner polarizer that we have. And the area of stories I may talk about later. Stories are getting a lot of play in a lot of the fields that I work with. Narratives, that it's really necessary to listen to other people's stories and how they came about to believe what they believe if you're going to get anywhere in terms of a discussion or trying to solve a problem. But they take it a little further than I've seen others do. And they say, okay, now that you've listened to each side's story, feel free to edit the story, build a new story. And you'll see that theme a little bit later. The video. Let's take a couple of minutes to see Braver Angels in action.
They don't believe how toxic this is.
Uh-oh.
If you're still using a plastic or wooden cutting board, you need to hear this. I never post stuff like this, but I had to share. I cook almost every day, so we've gone through our fair share of cutting boards.
So we have the pro cutting board people and the anti cutting board people, but they don't get along.
Yeah, and that got on the recording. All right. I hope it works. All right. Okay, here we go.
I'll go up one slide, although we'll get to that one. Let's go through this I mentioned this one. I'm sorry, we did this one. Next one. They seem to be very big on breaking the blues and the reds. I discussed who they are earlier, separately at one point in the process. And they have them discuss the inconsistencies and problems of their own side. And then later they bring them together. And apparently, if I read the articles right, the reds are watching the blues do it and the blues are watching the reds do it. And they bring them together, and people, you can imagine, are a bit humbler and much more receptive. And the academics that I've read who've looked at this, they're very, very high on this process. I guess if people are willing to admit their side is not perfect, it just makes it easy for the other side to discuss things with them. Next slide. A few things that they passed on along the way, say something positive about the other side. one thing that came up a few times. So what happens after the process is over? And they say they encourage people to continue those discussions, continue to build bridges, but there's not a whole lot of research on how well that works. Next slide, please. This is another group that does very similar work. I thought it was interesting. It came about because a liberal, Joan Blades, was frustrated that her issue, climate change, which is my issue too, was not getting anywhere. So she decided to reach out to conservatives, and she figured this approach of if you can learn to care about each other, then you could start to care about what the other person cares about. And it seemed to work for her. They're also big on conversation agreements. What are the ground rules that they're going to follow in the course of the conversation? And they also emphasize the quality of the conversation. This is not just talking for talking's sake. They emphasize that everyone will have time, and they set a high bar. They're not afraid of a high bar here. Aim for great conversations. The talk is not cheap. Approach it as a type of experiment. And they call listening the most powerful tool that we have to navigate the world. And some of the other things that come up in their work, active listening, it's not as simple or easy as it sounds. And things you probably have heard of before, listen for what's behind the words, for their feelings and people's feelings and their unmet needs. Next slide, please. A few more things. Don't hog the conversation. Hopefully the facilitator will not let that happen, but you're not there to promote yourself. Don't repeat yourself. Try not to make judgments. And if you do disagree, and you will, obviously, actively listen for ways to agree. Think about what common ground looks like. Now, they also offer separately info packets on 70 different topics. So you could decide to do this on something like, immigration or abortion. They give you a primer on it to get you going. I went through the one on racism, which was good, but I thought it was very, very one-sided. It happened to be my side, but I don't think it prepared people for the current state of democracy where we are now, where not everybody agrees with the left on this issue. And I think we still have a lot of work to do to figure out how do we move the country forward on racism now that we're suffering the backlash. That's a subject for another day. But I wish they would update it and bring in some newer ideas. Next slide, please. I think we're getting to the Thomas Jefferson stuff now. Okay, so this was, I mentioned earlier, this was a tour that discussed his on-again, off-again, on-again relationship with John Adams, and then we practiced. And again, the not-so-hidden theme, as quoted by some of the people who put this on or wrote about it, Monticello can be a civic engine for thinking about our current divides and remembering how to disagree better. And on the tour, you hopefully get a sense of inspiration about the possibilities this civic friendship, the possibilities of this civic friendship recovering itself. Meaning, if they could do it, maybe we could do it. I talked about in the dining room when Jefferson would deliberately invite people with whom he disagreed to try to make them more comfortable. The tour guide was telling us he would pour wine himself into their cup. And imagine what that feels like when the great man, the writer of the Declaration of Independence and the third president is pouring wine into your cup. You're probably going to be a little overwhelmed, and hopefully and maybe in a better spirit to have a healthy conversation. The tour guide talked about how they came together. They had an intermediary, Dr. Benjamin Rush, a common friend. He told each one separately how much the other one missed them. And that seemed to work. And the story that I read in an article, it helped that when John Adams wrote the first letter to Thomas Jefferson to break the ice, he included a book that his son, John Quincy, had written. And apparently John Quincy and Thomas Jefferson's policies were very aligned. So I guess that helped Thomas Jefferson to say, yes, I do want to see you. I don't think they ever physically saw each other. There was just a lot of correspondence. And then once they got together as friends again, they had so much to talk about. So it was a heartwarming story. Next slide, please. Then we got the practice where we had a table manners, which I think are akin to the agreement that living room conversation uses. You know, we're not there to convince, we're there to learn from each other. And they use cards to kind of get us going in the spirit. So when you pull the salt and pepper card, you would then ask someone else, tell me more. How did you come to that perspective? And when things got tense, you could bring up you can pull out a back burner card, and there were 2 or 3 suggestions along the lines of, you know, to cool the temperature. This is starting to feel like a debate. Let's get back to dialogue. Next slide, please. Well, I think this is time for a discussion. Oh no, one more. But this will lead to a discussion. Okay, so I thought I would test the group, but these are hard questions. So who comes to mind as our common friend who could bring us together? And who pour the wine? I'm guessing we may not have some great answers, but let's see what you got. So let's move to next slide to the discussion. So I got 3 to 5 minutes. See what's on your mind. Who will pour the wine?
Are you asking what a common friend that all of us might have? That
Oh, no, anyone in the country. Well, maybe your common friend is the one who will pour the wine. No, I'm asking if there's somebody in this country who is so respected and or esteemed that if they were to invite adversaries together, it would work.
I don't think there is anybody.
I was afraid someone was going to say that.
And I want to know, what do you do with all the people who see videos of things that happened like January 6th and say there was no violence? How do you deal with somebody who can't see the truth? It's not a one side or another. How do you listen to them if they're watching the same thing as you and they're seeing people get beat up and they say there's no violence? I mean, that's the latest garbage that's
but I like Matt's question. So who let's try to think. Is there anybody? I wonder if Michelle, probably not Michelle Obama. No. Yeah, that wouldn't work.
Would work with one side.
John McCain. Of course, he's not alive anymore. Julia's putting in the chat.
Jefferson.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah. Maybe, right?
How about
maybe there's some astronaut. Maybe there's some astronaut or some anyway, or some actor.
Anyone? I'll give you one, but I want to see if anyone else has one first.
George Bush. He who holds hands with Michelle Obama.
Oh, if they did it together.
Yeah. Do it together.
Apparently they're friends now. How about Dolly Parton?
What is it about Dolly Parton?
Dolly Parton has never become political. She's donated money for scientific research. I believe she's pretty well respected on all sides. Great musician, very well known. Any thoughts?
Yeah, but Dolly buys those books.
About anything,
What?
Matt, any questions for Matt so far, or anything else about, like he asked, any thoughts about Dolly Parton?
It sounded like someone had something on
I
that.
think it might have been Julia.
This is Julia. Dolly buys all those books for literacy, and some of those books might contain dangerous ideas for kids. But I think Dolly's a good choice.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments for Matt or Matt? Anything else?
Well, let's get back to Sharon's point. Sharon is raising. She's not on this exact issue, but she's raising a very, very important point. So how do you deal with an issue of people who are are facing a very, very different reality. In particular, what happened during the insurrection. Anybody have any ideas on that?
Well, I think maybe I'll keep my mouth shut. Somebody else answer.
Well,
Michelle,
I've done many living room conversations and led hundreds of them. Yeah, and
Welcome.
Flavor, Angels, all of them. And the beauty, is not to limit, it to one event that we may disagree on, right? The whole point of conversation is to see the humanity of the other person. And as we've all agreed, to simply listen, not debate, not convince, right? Not change their mind. And that's the beginning. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think the Dalai Lama said, the greatest gift we could give any other person is the gift of being heard. Yes, and that requires listening. And so I think the goal, again, is not to change someone's mind or debate them, but rather just begin to connect to each other's humanity by listening and asking the questions. Matt, as you said, how did you come to that perspective? Tell me more, right? And just being heard and not necessarily agreeing, I think, is where we start. So I'll leave it at that.
So Michelle, you're with living room conversations, and you've led these things?
For many years, I hosted living room conversations.
It's a privilege to have you here. Thank you.
That's about 5 minutes, Matt.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll get back to Sharon's point later. Okay, next slide. Okay, we got past that. Okay, well, here's part of my answer to Sharon. This is a very different kind of format. This is the one where you're actually bringing people together to try to address tough issues. So I can see a scenario where you bring people together to talk about that day. And I think you go through some of the same process of listening and getting to know people and becoming comfortable and passing the civil criteria. And then you look at, the data, you look at the facts, you look at the videos, listen to what the experts say. So you begin to approach, that really, really hard issue. And with a really, really good facilitator, you see if you can begin to develop, a common understanding.
Devil's advocate here.
Go ahead.
You said 2 words, facts and experts. And there's a real big
I know what you're gonna say.
No, don't believe in facts or experts or science and all of that. So anyway, just throwing that out.
Well, those are important points. And part of the answer is, look at the documentaries, give everybody a chance to comment. If somebody has another documentary that they say has a different perspective, show it. And see if you could begin to, bridge the gaps. But I said this more in the first talk. There are some prerequisites that are just tough. If people really are coming from a very, very different place, or they totally loathe the other side, can't stand the other side, this might not be the place for them. They probably better off doing whatever else they're doing. This is not going to work for everyone. I do wish the groups would be a little bit more open and saying that, but that was where my take on that. So yeah, if we're not going to agree on reality, it is going to make it very, very difficult to work with people like that. Next slide, please. This one takes it a little bit further. It's more iterative, deliberative inquiry, where they'll actually go through this process a number of times, and they explicitly recognize that some of these problems, what in the academic world we call them wicked problems, kind of like climate change, abortion, and some of the really, really tough ones that don't have simple answers, And sometimes any particular solution sometimes leads to, new problems. So basically, as a society, if we could just learn to do better addressing them, we're way ahead of where we are right now. So deliberative inquiry again brings people together to wrestle with these things. Now, at its best, or at least in theory, some see this as democracy at its best. And it has the value that if you could succeed in one, and I was part of one about a year and a half ago, and I would say we're about 80% successful in agreeing on issues, couldn't get to 100. But the idea being that if they can work on really tough or even unpopular issues, even if they only agree on 80%, it has a certain legitimacy because, we didn't come in agreeing with each other, but we left an 80% agreement, which is probably a lot more than anybody expected. But again, it asks people to, reach for a much higher gear. It tries to move democracy from just citizens as voters, volunteers, to actual problem solvers, and for a democracy as just voting to actually being, helping to actually, run the country, which is what we were taught once in school, that people run the country, and although it doesn't seem to be that way anymore. Next slide, please. A little bit more in conversations. As Peggy has said, you're not there to change minds. A number of people, Peggy and others, kept on emphasizing curiosity. Curiosity will save us. Ask, is there something I'm missing? Certainty is the arch villain of curiosity. There was a quote here from Guzman: curiosity busts through the reality distortion field that are blinding us to each other. It is our superpower. Next slide, please. Okay. Any comments from anyone? Can this work? Can you imagine a scenario where we get together with people who don't agree with us, and at the end of the day, we're actually agreeing on 80% of things? And if so, well, how do we run with this? Anybody have any experience in groups like this?
I think when you talk about the end result that people are trying to achieve, then you can talk about how you would get there. Because once you can agree on the end result, then you can start to flesh out the different ways people would approach it.
Can you give us an example of how that might work?
Off the top of my head, I mean, I can tell you about conversations I've had with my neighbor up the block. We're on opposite side of the political spectrum, but she's a teacher, wherever she retired this year. And we spoke about issues in the school system, and we're on the same page with the issues. So we pretty much talked about how we would approach it, right? So we get along great. There's no friction at all between us, but we know that some of the conversations we have are difficult. So as long as we're talking about like the common goal, we're able to flesh out the options of getting there.
So you're emphasizing common goals. How might that work with something like climate change or immigration or abortion, some of the real toughies? Do we have a common goal?
Well, I think you have to not use the trigger words, right? And climate change is a trigger word. So you can talk about pollution, you can talk about the ferocity of storms, and say, all right, regardless of how we believe we're getting there, the reality that we can't deny is that we are seeing a pattern change. So what are the mitigating steps that you would put on the table? And I'll tell you the mitigating steps that I would put on the table.
Okay. Good idea. Thank you. Do we have time for another person?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Do we have time for one more?
Yeah,
Or should we-
we have about 1 minute.
For the discussion? Anyone have a quick one?
I'm going to be devil's advocate here because I am actually thinking a great deal about our Supreme Court and all that they've done to get us to where we are. And I personally, always thought the courts would be our last stand here. And I hear you when you say immigrants. I mean, I was just speaking to someone, where Mr. Trump has clearly said, I want a white Christian country. So I don't know, Matt, normally I can see solutions. I'll have to say, quite frankly, where we are, I'm really not sure, as I'm very involved in Indivisible and many other organizations, to take action, because I've always imagined, had I been alive during Hitler's time, what would I have done? So this is my chance to do. I'll just say, it was one thing to think about it back in Hitler's time. It's now another thing to be in the midst of it and figure out how best to contribute to saving our democracy, which is my goal. So I didn't really have an answer for you, but that's where I am.
Some questions don't have answers, at least not right away. Next slide, please.
And you have about 6 more slides, I think. Yeah.
I'm changing topics here and really ways of looking at things. It occurred to me at one point in the research that when the opportunity comes up in, at the individual level, when we can have there might be the opportunity to have a conversation with the opposite side, we have 3 choices. I could say no, including if emotionally we're not there, and I'll talk more about that in the next slide. Or the ground rules that we spoke about, they're just not present. We just, we loathe each other too much. And the person is just not going to let me talk. That happens sometimes. Or you could argue back, which might feel good, but kind of defeats the purpose. Or you could ask permission for a conversation. And I've been doing this lately. But by this, we mean a real conversation, using some of these ideas to make it, real, legitimate, and a few times it happened to me recently, actually a lot of fun. Next slide. Here's where I might need some help from some of you. I'm looking at you, Peggy. This came up a number of times, and this might be new to some of you. It was new to me originally, but how we're feeling inside can affect our approach to bridge building or lack of it. And our emotional state can work with us or against us. And this comes from a number of places: integral theory, the inner development goals, which are the internal version of the Sustainable Development Goals. Peggy has done a webinar on it. And quoting some of the things I've learned from Peggy, we understand the war out there reflects the war in here. Therefore, the solution starts with me. Peggy, you feel comfortable picking up on that a little bit?
Sure. So how the internal reflects the external, you want me to talk about that?
Yeah.
Well, we can think about it. If I'm feeling really, if I'm at war within myself, let's say I've been mad at myself for years that I have 20 pounds to lose and I've never lost it. So every day I'm at war with myself. I'm mad at myself. I'm worrying about it. I'm struggling with it. Then that is going to affect every conversation I have, every action that I have. And so I'm going to bring some element of that war energy to every other conversation and activity. So that's what that means. And that's back to the kind of work we do here at Democracy Is Us, is to really look, if I want peace in the world, then peace has to come from me. As the beautiful quote says, there is no path to peace. Peace is the path. So am I being the path of peace? But it has to start within, because if I'm, always real upset, but I'm trying to act peaceful, my peace is going to be permeated with that discomfort, with that anger, with that shame, whatever it is. So it starts with doing our own work Now, but it's both and. I don't wait until I'm all peaceful, but every day I met this wonderful man one day one time that said that he said, what I'm doing now is tomorrow, I'm going to love more tomorrow than I did today. Love more tomorrow than I did today. So that's just his way of life. So it's that same sort of thing of feeling more at peace within myself. So I'm more peaceful in the world. Does that address?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Hopefully we'll get back to that in discussion later. And speaking of both and, next slide. Both and gets at a different way of looking at these problems, including some of the things that come up along the way. And I'm going to show you, instead of going through the slides, because I've got three, instead, I think I'll just read the first bullet item, and then I'm going to show you a video. Obviously these sides differ on these issues, but it may make, so it's really an either or, at least it looks like an either or. You can either believe the reds or you can believe the blues. But what if there's a creative way to do both and actually try to figure out a way that in some sense they both might be right and they both might get some of what they want. And this comes out not just in issues that they disagree with, but it also comes out in how we think about certain key core concepts like stories versus data. What if it could be stories and data, or emotion versus reason? Why can't it perhaps be emotion and reason? So let me show you, play you this last video, this poem that I came across about the power.
Matt, what was his name? I couldn't get it fast enough.
I'll have to send it to you. Let me send me your email or something. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's three on both and, but we don't have time for that. So let's go to, let's skip the both and slides. Okay, recommendations. Join one of these groups, Braver Angels, Living Room Conversations, participate. Perhaps go further and help them with some of the issues to get better and better, because we're going to need them very badly. It's still not clear to me what to do about the extremists, like the issue that Sharon raised. Doesn't have a great answer. Maybe there's a middle level there that people may be, I don't know, they may think they loathe the other side, but they actually are more open than they realize. Maybe there's a way to figure out that we could work with them. This is how we would do it, as opposed to those that would just be wasting everybody's time. Both and, I didn't have time to go into this, but it's not easy to look at the world as both and both and doesn't always work. Sometimes the two sides are very, very different, like with the Supreme Court example. But it might be there if you look for it. And it comes out in different places, like I mentioned, emotions versus rationality, storytelling versus facts. It may not be just one or the other. Bringing them together might actually open up some new possibilities. But it's not easy because I don't think our brains work that way. So you kind of have to shift it from the reptilian part of our brain to the frontal lobe, where we're better at this kind of stuff. So you have to pause and literally ask yourself, is it possible, even in this polarizing situation, which I hate, maybe I'm missing something? And it seems to me that we're, again, consistent with that running theme. We really, really are asking more of people. I know cynics are going to say that's just not possible, but I believe it's necessary. But we have to, begin to think about these things very, very differently. But we have these great efforts like Living Room Conversations and Braver Angels. We could start by participating much more with them. I think I'm done, and it's your turn.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Matt. Wonderful, wonderful information.
Yeah, these organizations are the bridge building conversations organizations, as you hear, and as Michelle mentioned, indivisible. There are lots of organizations, and then we're the organization that kind of comes before all of that. We're about being the change you want to see in the world, and we do some skill development too. But whatever place you're particularly drawn to, we encourage people to go to everything. So if it's the work Indivisible's doing, or if it's the work Building Bridges doing, and then you can come to us too for the being the change part as you're developing the skills and doing the other activities. So now we'll open it. It's 6:28. And so we'll maybe ask one question now. If there are several other questions, we can go longer, but we will call it officially done at the bottom of the hour. We do end on time or within a minute. And so, but we'll take one more question and then we'll call it the hour, but stay another 10 minutes for those that want to have a few more questions or comments.
It looks like somebody answered the question. Who was the poet?
Yes, thank you.
Teo Rockson.
Teo, yeah, Teo Rockson. I would just say with the end, I'm sorry, I found that just speaking to someone, instead of beginning with or, changing your or to an and, adding to whatever the person said, really changes the dynamic. Julia's nodding as well as Peggy. So I'll just say I have found that to be a wonderful tool to use.
Anybody else? One more thing, I will say that again, Democracy Is Us, we exist on donations. And so I don't know, do you happen to have the link, Joe, handy, or did you want to say something?
I just posted it just now.
Great, so it's in the chat. Did you want to say something or you want me to say something?
Go ahead, Peggy.
Yeah, so we do these right now in the summer. We've been meeting every other week, and we've had this special presentation. And starting mid-September, we're going to be back to really doing the personal development, growth, transformational work to be the change that you want to see in the world. So we welcome any and all donations. The link is in the chat, and appreciate your support. So now, again, we're officially closed. But if anybody wants to stay with any other questions, we'll take another 5 minutes or so, Matt, for any other questions or comments.
I was curious, what do people think? Does this have potential? It's not going to overcome polarization by itself, but do you feel that it could really help? Sharon, you still there? Debbie?
Well, for me, the most powerful thing I got from tonight was the reminder that it really starts within. And, it's important for me to be in an open, neutral, loving kind of a place rather than a polarized one.
Thank you.
And I would agree with Debbie. Peggy has said it as well, right? That's the foundation upon which we enter the conversation, as we're all agreeing, when we're so emotional, angry, anxious, depressed, what have you. It absolutely modifies profoundly how we approach it, how we interpret every word, how we see every situation. So yeah, it has to start with us. Absolutely. And that's the hardest thing to do, because frequently people are wishing when everybody else would please, right? We see my reality, right? And that's the beauty of practice, right? The more we practice, we have greater ability then. Let me be more clear. At least I'm studying with Craig Hamilton. Don't know if any of you know him. And it is all about, right, that you use the meditation in that moment to embrace every. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Everybody's got some background.
Which clearly then enables us to see through our eyes differently, interpret differently, and then I'm echoing, sorry.
Good one, echoing. Okay, great. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Debbie. I think Julia and Jody.
I'd like to add something else, but go ahead, Julia.
I think some statements are so profound, or so the enormity of the statement sort of rocks my soul. And it's Elon Musk saying the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. Just, baby, come sit right next to me and I'm going to hold your hand. Now tell me all about it. Start with birth. I want to hear everything. Where does that come from? I'm here to listen. Spill it. So sometimes it's just so, ooh, it rocks my soul. I need to hear it. Just go ahead and talk. I'll buy the drinks.
All right. Thank you, Julia. All right.
Yeah,
Sorry
Julia, you'll
to,
pour the wine. Julia, you'll pour the wine.
There you go.
We
Great.
found an answer to that question.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
Me?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that if there's a quote like we just had, I love to post short quotes like with a photo on my Facebook page. So if that's something that you can put forward, then it makes it easy for me to post it.
Okay, wonderful. We do have on our Facebook page, there are some quotes that are a little old because we haven't had somebody maintain it, but you can go to the Democracy Is Us Facebook page and we've got lots of quotes there that you're welcome to share. And then we're focusing on our Instagram account. So soon we're going to start posting a lot on Instagram.
Okay.
So, available too, Debbie. And Joe, did you want to say something?
Yeah, what I wanted to bring up was, if you ask where is the center of the universe, the answer is the center of the universe is within you. Because you see everything from your own eyes, you hear through your own ears. So everything in your experience revolves around you. Your choices determine your gravitational pull for everything else. So when you make choices to engage, you'll pull those things in. When you make choices to say no to something, you'll reject those things. It's up to each one of us to decide that we're going to broaden our gravitational pull and bring more diversity of viewpoints towards us. And that's our path to growth.
Thank you, Joe. So we are complete unless, Matt, you have any last words for us?
No, I'm just grateful that you all attended, particularly Michelle, because I just took, one of their courses and got a lot out of it. So it's like I feel so good that she's here and that you're all here. So thank you for the opportunity. And hopefully some of you will come back in 2 weeks because there's more stuff I'm going to be covering that I'm not an expert in, and I could use some help.
Okay, fantastic. That's September the 8th. So yes, we hope you'll be back and you are free to go. We will play our song that we love to play at the end. And so for those who would love to stay for our completion song, please stay. Otherwise, we are now doubly officially complete. Thank you so much for being here.